Hi, welcome to everybody that is joining us today. We are Deductum, also known as Overheard in the Gallery and now also Overheard in the Comments. Just a basic introduction of who we are. We are a collective founded, kind of started in 2019, beginning of 2019, and have been working together for the last 2 years. So just to introduce some of us, I'm Victoria Besta.
I'm Zhonghui Lauren Lee.
I'm Shayna Rosendorf.
I'm Jordan Anthony.
I'm Sajida Fazludin.
And for those who know us and those who don't, we have been currently completing our fine art degree at the University of the Witwatersrand, where this all kind of started. I'm just going to hand over to Shayna and Jordan to begin the conversation.
Thanks, Vic.
Cool. So we started last year as like a drawing project for university in third year, where we started off as Deductum, we made publications together, and then as a continued project, we decided to like start Overheard in the Gallery. It was a really cool process. We go to galleries anyway as art students, so getting to know the people who work in the galleries, engaging in the space and just like being in the space for a long time, to hear what people are saying about the art, and then obviously putting it onto Instagram to share that platform in context and out of context.
Yeah, and I think as becoming Overheard in the Gallery has really been a slow but something that's very reminiscent and nostalgic for us, because we've begun as a publication group and we've sort of evolved into moving out of the university into creating something for ourselves, something that we can hold on to, and on spaces where the audience is like not necessarily heard. And I think bringing a voice to what can be heard outside of the gallery, even in the gallery, in different art spaces, is something that we really enjoy doing.
Yeah, and I definitely think what has been interesting over the last couple of months is starting to become not so much as anonymous as we once were. I think we all had the agreement to stay anonymous because of the things that we post and the comments that we share, but I think what has become interesting is how we've evolved over that time into a more kind of like insertion of public opinion type of page and inserting that critique into online platforms, but also kind of engaging in the physical. And we found in like the process of collecting comments, for those who don't know, we overhear comments in galleries made by individuals who visit them, artists in the galleries, people that work in the galleries as well. And we kind of formulated an Instagram page that surrounds those comments and puts Art Critic out there, because we've always kind of believed that anyone can be an art critic regardless of backgrounds and the spaces that they occupy. I know that Shayna is going to be showing some of the posts that we do put out there, and how they kind of fit into different politics within the art world surrounding race and gender, sexuality, topics around feminism, and so on and so forth. So I think that a lot of these comments kind of speak to a broader range within and outside of the art world that I think are very important and that we have found very important over the years, but over the 2 years that we've been doing this. So yeah, I think if we can just move on to Shayna sharing the screen, and then we can kind of go through a discussion around some of the quotes that have been very important in our pages and in the discussions that we've had outside of the page around these quotes, and kind of contextualize them in a sense, surrounding their themes and issues. So we do have like quite a few in different languages, but also posts that kind of surround different topics, sometimes really mundane and satirical comments, sometimes very political and very personal comments that are posted, all of which have been anonymous over the time that we've made the page. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to insert commentary into the digital platform even before COVID, where we were forced onto online platforms. I think it's a nice way of sharing that commentary and having it a little bit more accessible in some senses.
And as we go through this talk, can you, like, if you have any questions, just write them in the comment section and then we will answer them at the end.
That's quite funny, like how people are like writing things in the comment section, and our like work is like about comments in the comment section. But I think there's one thing that's like really unique about our page is that these aren't our opinions, and we've become curators of things people are saying in the gallery. And so in that, like, something so important about our project is that it's not our project. It's like a huge collaborative effort from so many different people who have either sent it to us on Instagram, or just like told us things that they've remembered that people have said, or literally people have sent us lists that they've heard from galleries after working there for ages. So yeah, I think that's something that's really, really special about this.
I think something that's also quite special is that the post itself, it's not just people's opinions, it's also some of it is shared opinions. So I think some of the quotes that we've got pre-COVID was actually quite, some of them are very relatable, especially to, you can really see like who's making the comment and how art speaks to people who don't necessarily have an art background, and how art can translate from a white walled gallery space into the public, and then the public therefore becomes the art critic.
So now just in sharing the screen, so these comments were things that we'd like physically experienced or heard in spaces. And then we took a bit of a break due to COVID, just to regroup and work out. I mean, we were in our fourth year of fine art, just to kind of see where we were at and like kind of, yeah, regroup. So then we started doing Overheard in the comments, which was incredible. I think something about the online space and like the online art space at the moment is that it's so global, and we got to engage with galleries and gallery spaces and art institutions that we've never experienced before, and have conversations about things that were happening everywhere, with people engaging with the things that we were engaging with. Like they were next door in like America, and we're doing the exact same, we're like experiencing the same thing here. So
yeah, and I definitely think yeah, and I think like accessibility to these comments became a little bit more easy in the sense of like we could log on to different pages and experience that, like Jenna said, like internationally as well. I think it's something quite interesting, but it was also something very fun to see how people start to critique things from afar at quite a distant stance to the gallery. I think people are a lot more open to sharing their thoughts when it's online, and it's not necessarily something that has to be shared in a public realm. So I definitely think like the move to online overhearing was something quite interesting for us, and something that kind of posed a different challenge to us, especially because we were so physically based in a sense, but also collaboratively with the online like space. And
it's also interesting because we very much we only existed online. I mean, we did for a while. I don't know if you've seen like around Joburg, we like put up stickers advertising our page, and we also put up stickers of quotes that we had heard that are on our page. But then moving onto like an online art space wasn't specifically hard for us during COVID, I guess, because this is where we exist. And that's what was so incredible about like Turbine giving us this opportunity to interact with their fair. So this is what we've been doing now, where we listen to the talks and we listen to the comments that people are engaging with on Turbine's art fair, and having conversations about that. And that's also something incredible, like conversations are happening in our comment section. which is really, really cool.
Yes, and I think that before we go on to talk about what we've been doing at Turbine actually is to just take a moment to pause and consider that in the transition to the digital, there's also a loss that happened, and we did lose like some sort of the physicality and the interaction with actually going out and engaging in gallery spaces and art spaces and actively listening. And I think that transition to the digital, where we now look at comments, it's no longer hearing, we're now watching, and now we sort of note that there's something about the censorship on the digital, and there's like a spectrum, a weird spectrum that happens where people are either really brave because of the anonymity that is allowed on the digital space, and then you get people who just don't really want to say anything or critique it as much. You get like an overflow of good comments. So that's something I'm really interested in, is the kinds of critique that shows up on the digital space with the transition to the digital.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see like the different groups of people. If someone was with like a different type of body and they were speaking and looking about work, they would say different comments to it. But on an online platform, they would either be a very silent group or be very out there with their comments. So
yeah, and I definitely think in relation to this fair, what has really stood out to a lot of us
But I think
is
also there's like a kind of limitation to what people feel like they aren't scared to say in like the real world, like when you go visiting galleries, as opposed to like on a digital platform where people are aware, like, oh wait, others can see this comments, like, you know. So it's really interesting to see the difference between like digital versus.
Yeah, and I think like with that, a true kind of like depiction of that within the fair was that a lot of people were kind of holding back comments during the talks, in some of the ones that we have attended, and kind of having to kind of adapt to that and take comments from from the artists themselves, and trying to like figure out how to go about what we overhear in the sense of like censorship and stuff like that, how people hold back, but then the artists kind of don't. So it's like a different play now that we're online and mainly just digital based, because we've had to adapt to certain things like that. But I definitely think like the loss of the physical at the end of the day, I think for everyone during the COVID time has been a challenge to kind of adapt to, especially artists trying to formulate digital platforms to show works and have that kind of feel like the physical realm. But I think definitely we should move on to the conversation of the censorship within posts and people themselves carrying on this conversation about how we formulate our page and the comments that we take and what we overhear, and how comments can sometimes become political or just funny critique and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to hand that to Jordan to maybe speak a little bit more about.
Yes, before I go on to that, I see that there's a question in the comments by Richard. How do you overhear in an online gallery? And I think that's a really interesting concept to even think about. How do you overhear like in a digital space? Because you're watching, you're using your eyes. And then I guess there's sort of also a censorship that goes on when you do select the kinds of comments that you want to put out there at the end of the day. And I think that's what we do as well. We do select the comments that I think are shared ideas among the public, but are also issues that are existing in society that don't necessarily get brought up in talks. And I know that Turbine has had some really amazing talks, especially I think the most recent one yesterday was education in art, and that was one of the most important talks of this entire art fair, I think. And I'm actually quite glad that Turbine has extended the fair.
Yeah, I mean, in that we were having a conversation just this morning about, like, as you say, like context is so important, and something that we've been doing during Turbine is I mean, we initially thought we could like just listen to what people say in the comments, like literally just arrive at the talks and see what people are writing in this comment section that you're asking us questions in. And that obviously like doesn't happen in the way that we expected it to. So the things that we overheard became what the speakers were saying. So as Jordan was saying, like in that talk yesterday, incredible points were brought up, but those points were somewhat taken out of context by us and used to explain a broader issue, which I think is really, really exciting, that people can just like unintentionally say things that really speak to something so much bigger than what they're talking about.
And within the process of people trying to explain their point, when we overhear something, at that time it could sound quite humorous, but at the same time it becomes really political when you take it out of context.
Yeah, and I definitely think, I mean, yeah, another one of the talks that we went to that was really amazing was the woven envisioning the world through textile. And I think taking quotes out of there, a lot of quotes and selection of quotes that we had from there were very humorous, because I think the talk itself was quite entertaining, but at the same time it was almost a critique by the artist of the artist's works, but kind of engaging themes that are happening right now. I mean, like thinking through the act of binding and thread and staining and very feminine body orientated things and issues and kind of ideas that are going on right now and have been going on for many years. I think it becomes something that is relatable but also contemporary and historical at the same time, which I think it becomes kind of a nice play on what we kind of look through and post as things that are relevant, things that are historically relevant, and things that are relatable, humorous, and sometimes just entertaining in themselves. I think becomes a very big aspect of how we go about our posts and what we choose. And I think on the digital platform, it's very easy to curate those quotes in a sense. You have a lot more time to think through what you're posting and think through kind of like the repercussions of what you're posting, even though they aren't necessarily our own comments. But yeah, I definitely think that the way that we formulated and curated the space online has become kind of a hub for commentary, but also kind of a hub for sharing artists' work and sharing thoughts around artists' work that I think sometimes are lost in the physical realm. You don't really often hear comments about your own work or artists' work outside after you've left the gallery, unless there's like reviews and stuff like that. So I definitely think that the Instagram space has become one for international collaboration, but also a kind of social network that allows people to engage in the gallery space without actually being in the gallery space, which I think has become a very big key component in what we've been doing. Especially for Turbine, seeing as we can't physically attend a fair, I think it's very important that we try and make the internet space one that feels similar. And with that, I think we can move on to the commentary over issues which we've kind of been speaking about throughout the conversation. But I think some of the issues that have been brought up and have been posted, whether it be surrounding land or race or gender, I think have become a very interesting aspect. So I think maybe a screen share could be beneficial for that, just to see what we've been actually doing in Turbine, relating to some of the posts that we've gotten and kind of speaking through those posts in the context in which they've come from. So I think, yeah, let's go to a screen share if possible.
So just before I do that, I think I'll just, so Jordan wants to answer a question, but then also I'll just say, like, I think, like, as an artist, to get feedback from the people who see your work, the majority, the viewers, instead of critics and dealers and people who are engaged in art every single day, is so valuable. And just like seeing the conversations that are happening by everyday gallery visitors is incredible. And yeah, really, yeah.
I think the comments in this talk as well, also like something to be noted, because somebody, calculus says the fact that people stopped commenting because they were aware that their comments were being seen is similar to that concept of behaving in a certain way when you're on camera. And I think that's a very important point to consider, especially now that we're on the digital, and a lot of people are on the digital. And I mean, there's also another point on access with the digital. And Richard also says it's also about demystifying the academy, bringing in new voices to the hallowed spaces. And definitely, that is definitely what we try to do, I think, yeah.
It was also quite interesting, like maybe in the moment at a gallery visit, people would be too scared to, I mean, people at the gallery, when they view work, they'll just say what comes up in their mind, like the first thing they say. But on a comment, when we go through the different posts, like people will think about it and decide whether or not to say it. And it was quite interesting to view that. And then if I can just answer Bev's question, which I really find quite interesting, is do you think the permanence of digital footprint impacts people's desires to be open about their comments? I think for me personally, I'm not sure about my collective, but I find that on the digital, as everyone says that we're going to an online gallery and it's just images and PNG images, I think there's some lack of interaction within that, and it feels exactly the same as Instagram and just scrolling and not really engaging heavily with the artwork. So I think there is going to be a permanent like lack of art through the online.
I definitely agree. Yeah, but I think also speaking back to how we behave and like of being recorded and how we change the way we do things in real life and what happens when people are watching you. I think many people shared comments not realizing that we were kind of overhearing the whole time. But I also think it kind of speaks to, I guess, what this online space has kind of offered us, is this chance to not really be in what most of the time could often be an elitist space, and one that you'd have to perform a certain identity for. I think it becomes something that is a lot more relaxed and kind of becomes a space to comment personal views, which I think can sometimes be lost in the personal realm. The physical space, which I find was quite interesting of this whole time, is watching how people behave when they don't think that they're being watched, and also having that behavior be kind of permanent because of the social media and how it kind of forms part of an archive of what we say and what we do and how we engage with works. I think has become very interesting in this process of overwatching and overhearing Turbine's fair, which in most cases can sometimes be a very inaccessible place for some. I think the internet and the social space can also become a very inaccessible space for some as well. So I think like there are many pros and cons to how we go about viewing art and hearing art and thinking about how we engage with different facets of it. But yeah, I think I just wanted to look at the comments quickly and see if there was.
I'll just respond to what Ella said. With online, you can retype your comment and reword it rather than just saying what immediately comes to your mind. And as much as that is true, and I think a lot of us do, like that's exactly what we do. We make sure that everything that we say is politically correct and correct grammar. And I think, I don't know what you all think, but scouring the comment section on Instagram, I think because there's so many comments, people don't necessarily give that time and effort to what they write. Like people just say what they want to say, often in anger. That's something that I've noticed in scouring the comments. I don't know what
Yes.
you all think.
It also goes back to the idea of being on camera and being watched. Like some people know they're being watched, so they will say things or try to initiate triggers or be more passionate online to get a reaction. Sometimes that is the case, and sometimes it is actually a good thing because there are certain issues that require initiative.
And this comment space also becomes like a promotion, but also a protesting. And like the promotion of people always commenting, follow my Instagram page. I'm also an artist. My work is exactly like Nelson McCummell's or anything like that. It's like quite humorous to see. And then there's also those comments that we've seen in the past where people bring up social issues that we've already said before on these comments as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think some people, like, going back to what Jordan said about posting comments in order to get a reaction, I think some people don't often expect their comments to be posted and the reaction to be handled in that way, where it is kind of archived on a social space. And it becomes quite interesting to see the commentary on that comment as well, and how it sparks different conversations through different people and different backgrounds, which has been something that we've kind of been interested in since the conception of this entire project, was how people would engage and have the conversation of the comments made in the gallery space and now the online space. I'm just going to Ella's comment where she says, oh, that's true, the comments you type can also be manipulated by your emotions as well. And Bev says, your curation means you can pull the conversation in the direction you want it to go, which I completely agree with. I think the way that we've curated our online space has always been intentionally directed towards stirring a conversation over some issues that are very relevant right now, whether it be in our country or internationally based, especially issues around gender-based violence and Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth. So I think definitely the creation of our conversations and our posts kind of do direct towards the conversations that we also find interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, so just adding to that, I mean, like as students, something that's so valuable about being a student, being a fine art student, is the conversations you have with your peers. And obviously all of us are peers, we work together. And so in that, like, these are conversations that we're having about art institutions in an institution. So I think that that's really like we, yeah, those are the conversations we're having and we want to share them. I mean, we 100% decide what we want on that page. Jordan, I think we got like more than 400.
There's just over 400 comments alone that we've collected from Turbine, and collecting comments from Turbine, I think the process is also a little different because we're not only collecting comments from the audience, we are also actively listening and collecting commentary and drawing out specific words that come from the speakers themselves. And yeah, I think somebody can speak to that process.
Sorry, as well as Instagram. I mean, we're going onto the galleries pages and looking at the comments that are happening on the galleries pages, on our pages, and people are tagging us, and we've got a hashtag. So yeah, like we've collected a lot, and we're choosing what we want to say and what we think is a primary conversation that's happening at this fair. Yeah.
But I also think in that collection of what we've done for the fair, and the comments that we've gathered, there's also like a nice, almost like a collaboration with the artists that we also take comments from. I think it also provides a space for commentary made by the artists that often goes unheard, because nobody is always overhearing those comments. And I think it becomes a nice way to kind of insert actual thought processes and opinions from actual artists over their own works. So I think it becomes a very nice collaboration in a sense, and not just posting things without thought. So yeah, that's definitely how I think I've thought about the whole experience, especially with Turbine. And I think that kind of leads us into our the ways in which we've gone about collecting these comments and the processes behind it. I don't know if maybe Lauren wants to speak a little bit more to that.
So the way we went about collecting and processing these comments was that before Turbine, we would have a Google Doc and we split different various galleries. on the online and Instagram specifically, and we scoured those comments from like 2020 to 2016 of each of those galleries, and it was quite interesting to see. And then we identified each comment that we found the most interesting or the most humorous or out there comment, and we would put them on these Google Docs, and then Victoria and Shayna would but all of us would highlight each comment we found the best, and then we would decide to post them. So Victoria and Shayna like designed each of the posts, and then Shayna posts them or Jordan posts them. And then for Turbine specifically, we put all of the talks in a Google Docs list, and then we went each by one, and then everyone filled in the different talks that they were interested in, and we overheard from the talks, but also through the comments, and then did the same exact process of highlighting the best ones that we thought were the most provoking, and then posted them, and also added our own kind of like commentary in the description of these posts.
Just looking at the comment section, looking at the comment section, what Bev and Calculus are saying, if you look at our older posts, as individuals, we were commenting on the posts and initiating conversations about topics. It's not something we've done recently, but it's something I think we should continue with. And we invite everyone in this talk to really engage with our comments on the page, and we will engage back. And there are a lot of conversations happening on a lot of the posts. Obviously, more conversation around the more political posts. But yeah, I think a conversation about each post is so important. And as our following grows, those comments will just like grow, and yeah, so the bigger our page gets, the better the conversation
the more
will be.
conversations we can have as well.
Yeah.
I think what Bev says is, and developing an archive of a topical discussion. I think the possibility of us creating a publication or even making an archive more accessible is something that we would consider, definitely. It'll be a great idea.
I definitely think it's a conversation that we've been having, is the how to kind of make our online space move into the physical through publication. I mean, we had already made sticker packs of a lot of the comments and given a lot of those out, so thinking through how we'd kind of make a collection of, especially for Turbine's art fair, because we have so many, it would be a shame for them to not be seen. But also just going back to Reshma's point on the fact that we are also artists and not just students, and how we mediate different conversations, I think is very important. Oftentimes as students, we are always kind of in these critical discussions, especially in crits of our own works, and looking through how we've come to create those certain works, and the conversations mediated over those, I think is something that we have tried to definitely insert into the page, is trying to formulate criticality over the other comments that are made, just because those conversations aren't always accessible online. So definitely our comments and our captions for those comments have kind of been a way to drive those conversations outside of the institution and more into a space that is more accessible.
And I think the use of the language that we use when we're trying to discuss it to the broader demographic and not just the art institution, I think the conversations become more open, but also it makes it more accessible in terms of people who everyday people, and also people who do not have smartphone access. Before, when we were out and sticking stickers everywhere around the city, it was more accessible for people who didn't have smartphones to engage with these conversations or ideas.
Yeah, and I definitely think a lot of the conversations that we post are conversations sometimes that aren't always art related, taking the conversations outside of the art space into actual real inclusive, real life experiences of those comments. I think a lot of us have experienced some of the critiques that we post. So I think definitely moving and having taken comments sometimes out of context kind of creates those conversations that otherwise would not have happened. And kind of when we have been in the physical space, it's been more about chasing after comments and trying to, literally like chasing after comments, going to shows, trying to get people to engage with you. Keys Art Mile, definitely going through those crowds, filtering through individuals that are there for the wine drinking and the 5-minute viewing, and those who are there to critically engage. I think chasing those comments was always something that was quite a challenge, and I don't think that challenge has necessarily been lost online. We still kind of have to chase after them, especially in talks, but I think now it becomes more of something that is kind of accessible to us because we all have the privilege of smartphones and internet access. And I think that the parts that we lost kind of in COVID was that physicality of going out and sticking stickers up in Brahm and engaging with the public in that point. So
And I think on Vic's earlier point, and on the earliest point, is why we decided to stay anonymous was because when we decided to listen on people's conversations at gallery openings or at galleries in general, it was, if our faces were out there, it would be really difficult to get more content to post about or listen to, because I think people would become wary of us. So that was also another reason.
Something that just came to mind when Vic was speaking. Earlier this week, we had a bit of a crisis on our Instagram page where we like, I don't know, there were too many accounts logged in or something, and so we were like not like we were restricted from certain actions on our page, and it made us really think about like, what if Instagram were to delete our page? That's all that, like, that's the place that we exist. We aren't physical, we are digital, and I think that's a whole conversation about when things exist solely online and like, their material value and like how easily they can just disappear. Just something that I've been thinking about.
I think on that note of accessibility as well, I think that's something that also came up in one of the talks. Like, you could, at the click of a button, you could have access to everything, but then that's also dependent on your sort of socioeconomic place and background, because not everybody, still today, not everybody has access to internet, access to a smartphone or a device where they can actually interact with online galleries. And I think it's something, it's a bit violent for the digital space still.
Yeah.
But definitely just going on to our reflection of the fair, I think, is something that was also very interesting for us. I think taking comments out that sometimes either criticize or very much so praise the fair have been very interesting, and how what gets reshared from our page has also been very interesting to look back on, especially now that the fair has been extended by a week. I think our over 400 comments will kind of go up a little bit more, but definitely looking back on the fair, I think there has been quite a lot of engagements because people are very much aware of that online space, and I think that's what's really incredible about it, is the fact that it's an ongoing conversation, even though it's only a week long now. I definitely think the fair has provided a platform for us to kind of overhear a lot more than what we would have without it, especially because visiting some online galleries and stuff like that, they don't often have many people being as critical as what you would be in a talk. And I think those talks kind of provided that space for us to overhear very tirelessly. But definitely the online in that sense and in that reflection has become one that has kind of fed our page, but also fed conversations around certain topics that have been discussed that we think is definitely important. I know Reshma just asked, how's your digital fatigue?
I hate, like, I used to love being online and the online space, and now I hate it. Like I had to delete so many apps on my phone because I felt like I was drowning.
Yeah, definitely. I think being online all the time and having to tackle load shedding and Wi-Fi issues and reloading talks just to listen. I think the whole process behind overhearing and attending while also completing your own work and your personal practice and our collaborations has been something very tiring, but also very much worth it and very satisfying to a point of having to keep busy and keep up to date with what you're doing, with the information that you are sharing and that others are sharing. I think it's become something that is very well worth that fatigue in that sense.
Also, something that I find interesting is initially when we started last year, we started off as we were a publication project. So people in our course were making physical objects, and it was almost fresh for us to make an Instagram page and for our Instagram page to be our digital submission. Like we thought we were like trailblazers. Like we were handing in this Instagram page, like how incredible is that? And now it's boring to hand in an Instagram page. So I think it's incredible how much it's changed over a year, but also how we've changed with it. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is how fast we got used to being digital and just existing very much digitally, and I think that digital fatigue is something that really gets to us, especially now since we're actively listening to talks at Turbine, and then we're still focusing on our degree. We're trying to make work behind the scenes. We're trying to write research papers behind the scenes, and it's not easy, but I think after this fair, we'll really need a bit of a break.
Definitely. And then just to reply to Calculus, do you think people will comment more now that they know that what they say will be published, or would they cut back? When we started overhearing the fair, we did put out an announcement that we'd be overhearing everything to what we like, to the extent that we could. And I don't really think that people really hold back when that announcement is made. I think what we forget is, as humans, we kind of subconsciously like the attention that people afford us. I think, especially when your opinion is one that you need to voice and is very important, I think people are more open to voicing it and having people have the discussion around thoughts that they're having, because a lot of the time they are shared. So I think some people may have cut back, but I definitely don't think majority of the people that have been in talks or have hosted talks have held back, especially in kind of posing critical questions and even humorous questions. I think people quite enjoy that engagement over what they have to say.
I also think it's really important to mention how before COVID, a lot of galleries neglected their online presence and their space and how they present work online. And now, because of this push forward and the focus to expand these different ways of presenting and showing work, I think there would be lots more engagement and different types of engagement that happens through these online spaces. So we'll literally have to just wait and see, or people be too scared. We don't know.
I also think. Sorry, Sarge, go for it.
I was say, I also feel like maybe people know that more people are listening, or that we are present and we're listening to what they're saying, so they do have an opportunity, or they feel like we'll be more acknowledged if they do speak out or comment more. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, because I also think, like, Sarge, as you were saying, like, we're not mocking anyone on our platform. Everything that is mentioned is really important. Either it has like some political commentary, or it really speaks to misunderstanding art or re-understanding art. So in that, like, the comments are important, and I think, I don't know, I would take it as a compliment. if my comment was shared the page and was important enough to have a conversation about.
But I also feel like people should think about this as an opportunity as well to put out these important questions, put out whatever thoughts you have about the art fair, about the talks especially and conversations that's going on. And there has definitely been some important conversations. I think for me personally, I think we can all just start sharing what we found interesting in the fair. I think for me personally was art in education or education in art. That talk there specifically was important because there is a discrepancy between art that is taught in public and private schools, and that is something I would wish more to be spoken of. Like I would like more, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in not even attending the talks and looking at our comments, I don't know, seeing certain comments just made me very curious about attending talks. And that's also something that's so nice about this, is people can look at our page, see a conversation being had, and go onto Turbine's website and see it contextualized, and see people having a conversation about what we've quoted out of context. So yeah, I think we've really, I think we've added a really interesting dynamic to the fair, because you're so used to attending a fair and hearing voices, and we almost become the voice in a silent fair, I guess, at home.
Yeah, and I definitely think reflecting. I think it's very nice personally to be in talks that are kind of relatable to your own practice. Like I mentioned earlier, the woven talk really kind of stuck with me a lot. I think that these talks speak a lot to our own practices and a lot of the issues that we deal with privately. And just reflecting on that, I think Turbine has kind of created the online space for students especially and emerging artists to kind of receive information that isn't always accessible privately, but also kind of have the conversation over other artists' practices and what's been going on in the art world around us. Has really been something quite enjoyable, specifically for me within the fair, not just overhearing for the page, but more overhearing for oneself, I think has become a lot of how we get our person in the talks that we enter. It's a lot of directed interest in specific topics, and sometimes topics that we haven't really engaged with before. I definitely think the fair has provided that platform for us to be a part of.
So just looking at Luke's question, I'll just read it and we can all answer. In the future, when you're back in the physical galleries to overhear others, is there anything you'd do or approach differently after the prolonged digital quarantine? So something I noticed, I'll just think about social distancing and what you can hear from far away. I don't know, a gallery, I don't know, when you attend a First Thursdays and people are looking at art and everyone's close together and viewing things next to each other. I think that engagement is different. So I think hearing from a distance is something that we'll have to tackle when we get there. But I think we've discovered an online art space that we didn't really engage with whatsoever before. So I think that's something we've really gained. And we'll continue looking at those comments and seeing what people are saying all over the world, because it's relevant even here, things that people are saying all over.
And I really do hope that we can eventually, and I think a lot of people kind of hope that we do get back into the physical very soon or fairly soon, even though we kind of know that that's not really a possibility until there's a solid medical hope.
Definitely, I think after all of the time we've spent online, I think when the world is somewhat healthier to be in and safer to be in, overhearing comments will become somewhat of a kind of treat like a physical break from everything that we've been doing online. But one thing I would definitely do differently is spending the way that we used to kind of drive up and down to different galleries trying to overhear things is kind of maybe plan out more event listenings. Oftentimes you go to galleries and there's not many people there, or we're the only people there, and it's more like trying to think about our own comments over work. So I definitely think different plannings around how we tackle physical spaces that are also healthy and safe for us to engage in with regards to COVID, but in general, safety will be definitely something that we'd have to rethink. I mean, the last time we were really out and about was probably last year, before we took our break. So definitely thinking around safety and health, moving back into the physical.
Just to read Calculus's comment, art and education is a talk that deserved more time. What your collective is doing is a form of educating people, but the opinions that exist around art pieces. I think like that's also so exciting. And I think another thing we'll take out of this is during lockdown and during like all art institutions existing online, we've gained a much bigger following, and more people are engaging with us. So I think just as much as we go to galleries and hear what people say, outside of that, I think a lot of people who we've engaged with will send us things that they've heard, and it just keeps expanding, and that's I think what's really important.
Even moving away from, I think when Turbine is over, I think these conversations definitely still need to be brought up. And as Calculus said, art in education is a talk that deserved more time. And I think there are other talks as well that definitely deserved more time, especially the art in education one. I mean, that's something that not a lot of people consider because privilege is very real in art. And I just think that's something that definitely needs a whole lot more conversation.
So we've got 7 minutes left. Is there anything that anyone else wants to say? That these questions have really kept us going and engaging and really centered our conversation. So thank you for everyone who's commented and engaged with us. It's so exciting to see people just as passionate as we are.
Definitely. I think maybe let's give that a couple of seconds so that people can pose their questions if there are any. But definitely has fed and censored our conversation quite nicely. I think it's nice to see people commenting, which is kind of better for us, but yeah.
I also think there's so many comments that we could use as our posts. Like these are all so engaging and so interesting just to post about or talk about.
Also something funny is this is probably the only talk that is not being attended by one of us to overhear and on our page. So I guess we'll have to re-listen to the recording and quote ourselves and see what kind of things come out, because you don't really think before you talk.
Yeah, I think we're very much used to being the ones listening and waiting for the humor to come out or the criticality to come out, and now it's us under that lens. I think it's quite different. There's a question. Please tell me what year art students you are. Do you think your age is an advantage? We are 4th year fine art students at WITS. I'm not too sure if our age is, I guess age in itself, being young, is something not to be taken advantage of. I think in these spaces, it kind of, we've kind of navigated the online space quite well. I think we were kind of born into it in that sense. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I think regardless of age, I think everyone is very much capable of engaging in certain things, but that also comes at differences in privilege, and noting that there are a lot more other privileges that we haven't afforded at that age in the way that we've navigated the social and the physical space.
Yeah, I think age, something about age, I think the fact that we are in an art institution and we have access to that specialized kind of knowledge says something. And yes, we are young, we are like, what, in our early 20s. But yeah, I think the most important thing to value would definitely be experience over knowledge. That's one thing for me.
Yeah, and I also think comfort in the gallery space. The gallery is a really intimidating space. I mean, personally, I've been going to galleries my whole life, but as art students, being part of the institution, I don't know about everyone else, but it almost becomes less intimidating to enter the space. So yeah, I mean, that gives us like the opportunity to exist there and listen to what people are saying. We're getting incredible comments. Thanks, everyone.
And then just to go to what Vishma said, what she enjoys seeing is our shift from predominantly humor-based listening to something that has developed into a more critical voice. I definitely agree. I think when we first started this, we had actually almost disbanded the collective nearing the end of last year. I think, luckily for us, we didn't, but our intention has always kind of been to Overhear, and kind of has shifted definitely from humor-based to more critical conversations, because I think that's what also is in our practice, are conversations that are very critical, and we kind of wanted to shift the lens to that criticality, which I think has been quite enjoyable. But yeah, and then the idea, you guys should sell the idea to Tate or BNL somewhere, and international.
I'll just interrupt in just in our last 3 minutes. I think a really important question. How about mentioning the actual artwork to which the comment applies? That's a conversation we've had a lot. Sometimes we do, most times we don't, just because, as we've said, like, they speak to so much more than just the artwork. I mean, in our archives and in our research, we do write down where we're getting our comments from, and who's writing them, or when we heard them, or what exhibition we saw them at. But yeah, I think we only really mention it if it's relevant. Otherwise, it becomes too like singular. Doesn't speak broad enough.
Yeah, and I think when we first started our page, we were wanting to make all of the comments anonymous, and in doing so, kind of make it a space that people would feel free to comment on, and that's why we were anonymous for almost 2 years. I think this is like the first time we've had an actual conversation where all of us have kind of identified ourselves, but we kind of took that anonymity to the Instagram page that we had, you know, just to provide that space for further engagement. People wouldn't really be out for their comments, but like Shana said, on our Google Doc, everybody's comment has their Instagram tag next to them, or what work it's about. So yeah, and then
Vic, I'm just going to interrupt you. We've got 1 minute left, and thank you so much to everyone for engaging. It's been really such a dynamic conversation, and I feel like we have had a conversation with all of you. So in that, we really just want to thank Turbine, the viewers and the critics, and really, most importantly, our contributors. Really, as we said, it's not just us, and hopefully some of our contributors are listening. And if you want to send us something that you've heard or something that you've even thought, we would love to share it. And yeah, we just want to thank you for this incredible conversation. It's really so inspiring.
And you guys can reach out to us anytime you would like to have a conversation, or anything around that.
Yeah, you can find our page on most of the time Turbine will reshare our posts, so going onto their stories, our page would probably be there. But thank you all for engaging with us.
Overheard _ the gallery on Instagram.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.